By Yomahu Lamali. On the top of Yud Chesam and Beis, the Gemara explains the secret of Rabbi Yossi for Rabbi Yehuda. There are two words here by Yomahu. We, even in the absence of these words, had the Torah left out the words by Yomahu, we would understand that it's referring to the 8th day, and that's when he begins the Kiddush Yisrosho to count his Yemei Nazirus Tara, because it says in the pasuk V'chipar Olav, and that's the 8th day when he brings his carbon. So why do you have to add the words B'yomahu? And one of the midos shenidreshes b'hana Torah is im eno inyan lezet tneu inyan acher. Im eno inyan l'shmini tneu inyan l'shvi. That he could begin counting his Nazirus of Tara on the 7th day. And that's what the extra pasuk, the extra words by Yomahu are coming to teach me. And when it says V'kidesh Yisroel by Yomahu, it's referring to the 7th day. That's the day of his Tiglachas. Oh, I was happy that I mentioned that before. I didn't realize he said it explicitly. And Tiglachas is mentioned in the Psukim here, in the earlier Psukim, and therefore, on that day by Yomahu, the day of his Tiglachas, which is Yom HaShvi, on that day already he begins counting his Nazirus of Tara. So Ula Rebbe Nami Oksiv by Yomahu. What does Rebbe do with the extra words by Yomahu? Gemara answers Amilcha Rebbe Hahu Lahachi Udeos. These words are coming to teach us the following: Loma Lecha Afal Pi Shelo Hevi Karbonosa. In other words, when we get to the 8th day, he has a chiyuv carbon of tumah that emerges with daybreak on the 8th day, but nevertheless, even before he actually brings his carbon, he's already considered, let's go back to that pasuk, Yatzal l'shah ha'ru'uyel havi carbon. And this teaches us that even though he hasn't yet brought his carbon, but it's shah ru'uyel havi carbon, he has a chiyuv carbon tumah, and that's when he begins by Yomahu on the 8th day to count his Nazirus of Tara. I would formulate it in the following words. I don't know if this helps at all, but there's something inherent in the Zman, in the Yom itself, that begins the Nazirus of Tara, because that Yom is the Yom of Karban Tumah, and the Karban Tumah is going to complete his process of Tara. And again, it's not a din in the actual carbon, meaning the Havas carbon itself is going to terminate his previous state of Tumah and engender a state of Tara. No, it's not a din in the carbon, but rather the Yom. And that's what we derive from the pasuk B'Yom Hahu. Because if we only had the pasuk B'Chipar Olav, we would assume B'Chipar Olav means before he actually brought his carbon, and only then he has terminated his state of Tumah, and he could begin counting Yemei Nazirus of Tara. But now that it says B'Yom Hahu, we interpret it by Yomahu, it's a din in the Yom, and it is a din in the Yom that generates a chiyuv, a chalos chiyuv, chovas havas carbon, and that's when immediately with daybreak, he begins counting his Nazirus of Tara. I'm not exactly sure, maybe Rabbi, you could help me with this one. What's exactly the nafkamina here? In other words, yeah, we haven't gotten to the nafkamina yet. Like, that's going to come a little bit later. Okay, now we go back to Rav Chisda. We took a little bit of a break. Now we go back to Rav Chisda. We've already clarified that according to Rebbe, he begins counting his Zirus Tar B'Yom HaShmini even before he brings his carbon. So now let's think, when exactly does Yom HaShmini begin? When does it emerge? Right? In Halacha, we say Hayom Holech Achar Halayla. So already on Leil Shmini, the night going into Shmini, he should be able to begin his counting his Nazirus of Tara. Oh, Baruch Hashem. I was mechavein to the Gemara Chulin Daf Pei Gimel that according to Dinei Torah, the day begins with Laila, the night before. It has it say in the Pasuk Vayerev Vayivokim. Affecting Gemara of Rav Chizda, my duchili ukmei kirab Yossi Rav Yehuda. Why does Rav Chizda feel that he's cornered and he has no possible way of attributing that Mishnah in Krisus to Rebbe? He's forced, his hands are tied, he has to introduce Reb Yossi. That when it says in the Mishnah Krisus, again, to review, that in Nazir shenit metumas harbe mevi korban echad, and it means that his second tumah was on Yom HaShvi l'taraso, lukma kegon de nitma b'leil shmini, and this can work out even according to Rebbe. He contracted tumah on the night going into Shmini, and we should be able to count the zirus of Tara already on Leil Shmini, because that's the beginning of Yom Shmini. And we learned already, according to Rebbe, from Bayom HaShmini, Bayom HaHu, that's referring to Yom HaShmini even before he brings his karma. So we should include the night of Shmini and classify to find it as Bayom HaHu. So he began his Nazirus to Tara already on Leil Shmini, but yet he hasn't yet been chayav the karban Tumah, because that korban tumah will only be on Yom HaShmini, right? The Beis HaMikdash is closed for business at night. So that would mean that if his second tumah was contracted on Leil Shmini, the night going into the day of Shmini, and he was nitma, therefore, before the chiyuv korban emerges, so that we could collapse all these tumahs into one chiyuv korban. And the reason for that is because already at the night of the Shmini, he already begins counting his Nazirus of Tara. And why is that? Because the Torah says Bayom HaHu, and Bayom HaHu is referring to Shmini, and Shmini begins at night. So we already have, in a certain sense, we have Tumas Harbe, because he's already entered into the period of Nazirus Tara in the night of the Shmini when he contracted Tumah. But we can combine and collapse all these Tumas into one, because the tumah took place before the chiyuv karban emerged, so that the chiyuv karban will only emerge on Yom HaShmini during the day. And the Gemara now analyzes this in the context of a famous sugya. Midalo mukim le kirebi, from the factor of Chizda. This is like Sherlock Holmes over here. We can analyze Rav Chizda from not from that which he says, but that which he did not say. And the factor of Chizda did not find any sort of option of attributing that Mishnah increases to Rebbe in a situation where he contracted tumah on Leil Shmini. Lema Kasavar, we have to assume perhaps that Rav Chizda, in the famous machlokes about Laila, is of the opinion that Laila lav mechusas manu. In other words, that already at night, he's already chayav in the karma. And that's called Laila Lav Mechusas Manu. So in other words, Hakrovas HaKarm requires day. There's no Migdash at night. But when we get to the night before the day, and it's halachically considered part of that day, because Hayom Holi Chachar Laila, then he already has a chiyuv karma, because he's already entered into that day of karma. And he's not considered mechusas man. Right? And Rebbe holds that he begins to count his Nazir's Tara from the beginning of Yom HaShmini, even before he brings his karma. Okay, that we said. And he writes here, Kol dover shepsulo hu machmashadayin lo igi zmano, harei mechusas man. And the famous case of mechusas man is the case of a behema shepsula krabel ufnei Yom HaShmini l'leidasa, So the Torah says, you can only bring a korban in the 8th day after the animal was born. It's 8th day. And the question is, what's the status of the night going into the 8th day, which is called Mechus Zman? And now we're holding that Laila Lav Mechus Zman. So basically what we're saying is that the Chiyuv Karban emerges at night. The kiyum of that Chiyuv Befal is Me'ukav. It's like delayed because of a separate reason, that the Beis HaMikdash is not open for business. And Befal, he can't bring the korban until the morning. So it's only a din of dechiyah, really. The chiyuv emerges already at night. It's already the day of the korban. With being doches, sort of, there's like a barrier that prevents the akrava Befal from happening until the morning. So how does this impact on the Mishnah in Krisus? If Laila would be Mechus Zman, then we could explain the Mishnah in Krisus according to Rebbe, because he was nitma before he giazman karma, before the chiyuv karma. But the reason why Rav Chizda doesn't have that as an option, and it's impossible for Rav Chizda to interpret the Mishnah according to Rebbe, is because Rav Chizda must be holding Laila Lav Mechus Zman, which means that the chiyuv korban already emerges at night, so that there's no way he can collapse all these chiyuvei korban into one korban, because already at night, even if he contracted tumah at night when it's impossible for him to bring the korban, he's already a bar chiyuva. Again, I would continuously quote this language of the Brisa of lo yatsa, but here it would be yatsa l'shah haru'uya lahavi karma. And what I mean by shah haru'uya lahavi karma is not befal. Obviously, he can't bring the karma until the next day, but we're holding that Laila eina mechus zman. And therefore, if Laila eina mechus zman, it's already a chiyuv karma that's emerged. Then with the leil of Shmini, he has a chiyuv karban, and therefore he needs a karban for that tumah of leil hashmini. He can't combine and collapse all these tumas and all these chiyuvei karban into one karban. So in other words, it's considered, if you hold lav mechus zman, as if he gias zman karban. Even at night, it's considered he gias zman karban as far as the gaver is concerned, and his chovas karban. And since he became Tomei on the second time on the night of Yom HaShmini, therefore, it's as if he was Nitma B'Yom HaShmini. And we said clearly that if he was Nitma B'Yom HaShmini, then he needs a separate karba for that tomb of Yom HaShmini. And that boxes Rav Chizda into the corner, and he cannot interpret the Mishnah in Krisus according to Rebbe. And this leads us to Rav Ada bar Ava. All right, so here I have to say a shir of malas, mimamakim. I've been working on this Rav Ada bar Ava, trying to figure it out. But you know what? Sometimes when you learn something together with someone else, then it's bar shot. Now let's just get the structure. What's the purpose of the goal of Rav Ada bar Ava? He wants to suggest that, you know what? It's very possible that Rav Chizda holds that Laila mechusar zmanu, not the way we analyze Rav Chizda. So Rav Ada bar Ava has a new analysis of Rav Chizda, according to which Rav Chizda was boxed out of Rebbe, even though he holds that Laila mechusar zman. And why is that? That's because of a principle called ha b'ha talia. So again, what we're trying to suggest here is that according to what Rav Ada bar Ava is trying to suggest is that even if Rav Chizda would hold that Laila is mechusar zman, okay, he has no option of attributing the Mishnah Krisus to Rebbe. And that's because of Haba Talia, which means two things that are interdependent. Now, all this has to do with the beginning of the counting of Yemei Nazirus B'Tara. And Haba Atalia means that the beginning of the counting of Yemei Nazirus B'Tara depends upon the time of the Chiyuv Karma. So once he has a Chiyuv Karma, that's enough, if I understand correctly, to engender a beginning of a new period of time in which he can count his Nazirus of Tara. So it means, Haba Atalia, it's impossible to differentiate and say, well, you know what, the Minyan Yemei Nazirus is going to begin on Leil Shmini, and the Zman of Hagavas Karban is only on Yom Shmini. And why do we say that this man Havas Karban is Yom Shmini? Because according to Rav Ada bar Rava, Rav Chizda might be holding that Laila is Mechusas Man. So Amrit Laila Mechusas Man, which is what we're trying to suggest here, according to Rav Ada bar Rava and Rav Chizda, that Laila is considered Mechusas Man. And there's no chiyuv karban at night at all whatsoever. Is emas michse lekarban. So when does the zman aroy lekarban and the chiyuv karban emerge? Litzafra only in the morning, because the night is called mechusas zman. So already up to the morning of Yom HaShmini, obviously, is therefore the Nazirus nami lo chayal ad tzafra. Because of the principle of Haba Atalia, the counting of Nazirus Tara could only begin in the morning of the 8th, at the time that it's royal avois karba, where he has a chovas gaber to bring his karba, because Laila is mechusas man. And the Torah says v'chiper v'kidesh, which means v'kidesh, he starts his Nazirus Tara, and that's only the chiper, meaning when the chiyuv karban emerges, and we're holding now that Laila mechusas man, and therefore the chiyuv karban only emerges by day. So if he contracted tum at night, then since he hasn't begun his Nazirus of Tara, then it's not even a separate tumah, right? We're trying to get to the goal of the paradox of the Mishnah increases, that on the one hand is Nazirus harbe, on the other hand, but we don't have Nazirus Harbe over here, because Nazirus Harbe could only apply if the Tumah took place after he ended and terminated his period of Tumah and began counting his Nazirus of Tara. But he doesn't count his Nazirus of Tara until the Chiper V'Kidesh, which means at the time of the Chiyuv Karban. And we're holding now that Laila is mechusas man, so the chiyuv karban only emerges in the day, so there's no tumas harbe. And let's go according to the second possibility, that Laila ain't a mechusas man, so it means already with the beginning of the night of Shmini, he's already in the zman of havas karban, is then Nazirus Tara chalame urta. Then he would begin counting his Nazirus Tara at night, because we're holding now that Laila ain't a mechusas man, and he's already considered a bar chiyuva, he's royal carbon at night, and therefore, if he was nitma b'Laila, which is after the chiyuv carbon already took place, then he cannot bring one carbon. So we're in a mimanavshach situation. Either it's not tumas harbe, or it's the efshar lotzeis v'li pot alidei carbon echad. He would have to bring a separate carbon on each tumah v'tumah, because he's already, if we hold zman is eina mechusas man, he's already in a state of chiyuv carbon at night, and his Nazir's Tara will begin at night, okay, fine. But then he contracted a separate tumor in a new period of time of Nazir's Tara. How could he kill all these birds with one stone? He would have to bring a separate carbon on each tumor v'tumor. So again, if you ask the question why Rav Chisda could not attribute our Mishnah increases to Rebbe in a situation, in a scenario where he contracted tumor Leil Shmini, that's because there's no possibility logically, Mimonavshach, whether Lail is Mechus Zman or not, to attribute it to Rebbe, either because there's no Tumas Harbe or because he actually Poter B'Korban Echad. Hashem accepted my tehillim, my bakosh. Now, do you have the word gufa here? I don't know. He says that Tosfos takes out the word gufa. But I have the word gufa. Anyway, so again, a Nazir that contracted tumah, he was mitayr himself for 7 days. Nitma, he had a second incident of contracting tumah biyom hashvi, b'shvi, on his 7th day of Tara. B'chazav v'nitma biyom hashvi. So once again, he counts another 7 days for his second tumah. And he had a third tumah on the 7th day. Eino mevi el korban echad. He only brings one korban. You see, if you have the Girsa Gufa, I think this is referring to the Mishnah increases. But here we're learning a Brisa, as we'll soon see. So you might want to take out the word Gufa. That's Tos. All right, anyway. So Eino mevi el korban echad. And why is that? Because his tumah preceded his chiyuv havas carbon. Because havas carbon is only on Yom Shmini. However, nitma bishmini. So now he's counting 7 days to his Tara. On the 8th day after he completes his Tara from his original tumah, chazav v'nitma. He contracted tumah, he came in contact with a dead body on the 8th day. And this happened again and again. V'chazav v'nitma b'yom hashmini is maybe korban al kol echad v'echad. Why? Because he contracted tumah after the chiyuv carbon already emerged, and therefore his previous incident of tumah is already complete with its own chiyuv carbon when he gets to the 8th day. And then the Brisa says, which this has nothing to do with the Mishnah increases, maschil umone miyad. So maschil umone miyad is an indication of the shita of Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda, that once on the 7th day they gave him the hazaya and he was told b'mikvah, he's already considered tar, and therefore he can already on the 7th day begin counting his Nazir's Tara. Elu divrei Rabbi Eliezer. Now I'm not sure exactly what is Rabbi Eliezer here. Not sure. I mean, l'chora, this should be Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda. Let me just see. Let's go back again. According to Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, Bayomahu is going to tell me that on the 7th day already counts as Nazir's of Tara, correct? Shemaskal limnos Nazir's Tara b'yom hashvi. So there's a long footnote here, which I didn't get a chance to go through here. This is a very complicated sugya here. It's not for Daf Yomi. Anyway, he says, Shaf shemi loshen abraisa mashma shemasha omer Rabbi Eliezer maskil umona miyad hakavonei liyom hashmini kedas Rebbe shenazirus tar maskil b'yom hashmini mikom makom yef shalom arkein sheim chala nazirus v'chak b'yom hashmini Nimsa shekshenitma v'yom hashmini sasarak yom echad. So how could it be that Rabbi Eliezer holds you bring a korban for each tumah v'tumah? All right, this is a langa arichus here. I'm not going to have time for that. What time is it? Oh my gosh. The Chachamim disagree with Rabbi Eliezer, and even though he contracted his tumah on the second round on Yom HaShmini, nevertheless he brings korban echad al hakol. Why? Achi yovi chatosa. So this is a radical change here of the Chachamim, and you could combine and collapse all the tumos into one korban as long as he hasn't brought his korban chatos until this point. Hevi chatos, however, if he already brought his korban chatos for the first tumah, the original tumah, the previous tumah, v'nitma, and then he has another incident of contracting tumah, hevi chatos, and again he brought his chatos for a second tumah, and v'nitma, and he had another incident of tumah, maybe korban al kol echad v'echad from the tumahs. Hevi chatoso v'lo hevi ashamo is nevertheless mona. He can already begin counting his Yemei Nazirus of Tara from the time of his hakrovas chatoso. So far this brisa has quoted Rabbi Eliezer, and he holds that if he contracted tumah on the 8th day, then he has to bring a separate korban, because he's holding like Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, that already on the 7th day he started his Nazirus Tara. And the Chachamim, on the other hand, say that as long as he hasn't brought his korban for any particular tumah, we can collapse all of them into one. And this applies even, right? But if he had already brought his chatas, even though he hasn't brought his korban osham, then in such a case, he needs to postpone his Nazirus of I'm sorry. He can already count his Nazirus of Tara from the moment that he brought his chatas. Now the Brisa quotes a third opinion. Rabbi Shmuel ben Oshel, Rabbi Yochanan Broka Omer, Kishem shechatosu ikvoso kein ashomer makva. Basically, Rabbi Shmuel is on the same turf as the Chachamim, and everything depends upon whether he brought his chatas. Just that Rabbi Shmuel adds another condition, and he has to bring his korban osham. It's not enough that he brought his korban chatas in order to begin counting his Yemei Nazirus V'Tara. He's got to bring not only a chatas but also korban osham. So according to Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, he begins counting his Nazirus V'Tara Yom HaShvi. According to Rabbi, he begins counting at the beginning of Yom HaShmini, even though he hasn't brought his korban yet. According to the Chachamim, he begins counting on Yom HaShmini after he brought the korban chatas, and according to Rabbi Shmuel, he begins counting his Nazirus V'Tara only on Yom HaShmini after he brought both the korban chatas and the korban osham. And the Gemara analyzes this. Bishleim Rabbi Eliezer. I understand that Rabbi Eliezer holds that already on Yom HaShvi he can count his Yemei Nazirus V'Tara, and that we derive from the extra words by Yom Hahu. Omar Kra, the Torah says of Yom HaShmini, etc., v'kiddush es rosha b'Yom Hahu, and the two words of Yom Hahu are superfluous to teach me Eino Inyan L'zeh L'Yom HaShmini Teinu L'Inyan Yom HaShvi. Is afal pi shelo hevi korbanos. According, obviously, on the Yom HaShvi, he can't bring his korbanos. He can only bring them on Yom HaShmini. And nevertheless, he could, based on this Gzeres HaKosuv of by Yom Hahu, he can already begin counting his Nazirus D'Tara on Yom HaShvi. Urabanan, I understand the Rabbanan derived from Bayom Hahu afal pi shelo hevi ashamo. El Rabbi Shmuel, Hahu, Bayom Hahu, Lomali. What is the pasuk Bayom Hahu teaching me? Amalecha, Rabbi Shmuel would answer that Bayoma who is teaching me Afal Pi Shelo Hevio Losa. So in other words, there are three karbanos. There's Chatos, Osham, and Ola. In the case of Nazirus Detuma, the Ola is a Ben Yona or a Tarli Ola that a Nazir Tar brings after he was Tomei as part of his Seder Karbanos. And Bayomahu, the extra words are coming to teach me that he can begin to count his Nazirus Detara even before what? Even before he brought his Karban Ola. And thank God, Baruch Hashem, there's no fourth shita here in the Brisa that would say that he's not allowed to begin his counting of Nazirus Detara until he brings even his Ola, because then we really don't know what to do with Bayomahu. So when I asked the following kasha, Rabbanon, how did the Rabbanon know to darshan from this pasuk that he begins to count his Nazirus Tara before he brings his Karban Asham? And that's what Bayomahu is teaching me. Maybe the pasuk is only telling me that he begins counting before he brings his Ola. And that was the Shita Rabbi Shmuel. And the Gemara answers no. Ola lo boy miyuta. The Karban Ola is different than all the other Karbanos. It's inherently in its own category. I don't need a miyut to teach me that the Ola is on a secondary downgraded level, so to speak, and it's not ma'akiv the beginning of his counting of Nazirus Detara, because what's unique and what's inherently different about the Karban Ola is Doran Bialmahu, which literally means it's a matana l'melech. It's not coming for kapara, and therefore for sure it's not going to be ma'akiv the beginning of counting your Nazirus, the minion of Nazirus Detara. And therefore, what do we do with Bayomahu? We have to use it to tell me that he brings he begins counting his Nazirus Detara even before he brings his Karban Asham. So Gemara asks my time at the Rabbanon, why do they dash for the word Hahu? That the Asham is not Ma'akev. L'chora, I don't need a drasha for that because the Torah says V'kiyashis Rosho, even before it presents the din of Havas Asham. And V'kiyashis Rosho is the source for which he starts his Nazirus, his minion Nazirus of Tara. So we know already that he begins to count the Nazirus of Tara before he brings it Asham. Why do I need Bayomahu to teach me that he goes into he's propelled into the Nazirus Detara before he brings his Asham? The Torah hasn't even mentioned the word Asham. And it says V'kiddushis Rosha. The Sanya, we learned in a Brisa, I'm sorry. And the Gemara's answer is based on the Brisa. The Brisa says that the pasuk about a Nazir Shenitma, it says V'hizer Lashem es Yimei Nizro V'hevi Keves ben Shnosol Yasham. So the Brisa asks, Ma Talmud Lomar, why did the Torah have to write this pasuk in which it tells us the din of Havas Chatos V'ola? Madua Kosva Torah pasuk Zeh Bein Din Havas Chatos V'ola Bein Din Havas Asham. Why is this pasuk wedged in between Chatos and Ola on the one hand and Asham on the other? And the answer is Lafi Shevatzinu Shekol Asham Shebator Shema Akvin. Whenever there's a process of kapar and tara, we need to bring the Karban Asham. For example, Asham Tolui, Asham Me'ilos, Asham Gzelos are always ma'akiv the kapara. Asham Mitzora is ma'akiv the tara, and he can't eat kodshim. Is Yochel, I might think, af zeh, even in the case of the Asham Nazir Shenitma, is ma'akvo, he cannot begin counting his Nazirus Detara until after he brings his Asham. And here on Daf Yud Tesam and Aleph, Talmud Lomar, V'hizer V'hevi. That's why the Posuks is Makdim and writes V'hizer Hashem es Yimei Nizro before V'hevi Keves Eshnosol Yasham to teach me that Afal Pi Shalohev, even though he hasn't yet brought his Keves Liyasham, because that appears in the next Posuk, it's nevertheless easier. He can begin counting his Nazirus Detara, and that's the sheet of the Chachamim. Rabbi Shmuel ben Osher, Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, as we saw earlier on Yud Chesam and Beis, who holds that he has to bring his korban asham before he begins counting his Nazir's Tara. Omer, he says that when the pasuk says Vehizir, let's darshan it, Vehizir vehevi, Mosa Hizir, Bisman shehevi. When does it begin, Vehizir, to count his Nazirus of Tara? Only after he already brought his korban asham. Okay, then, so this is where we're going to stop here on Daf Yud Tesam and Aleph, and I'm going to wish you a great Shabbos, and we get a mazel tov. We have a grandson's bar mitzvah this Shabbos, and we'll see each other mitzvah on Yom Rishon. So have a great Shabbos.